Occupied by the Chart House restaurant, a great place for a lunch or dinner after a cruise, and they have a patio deck out behind the building, a great place for outside lunch after a cruise. It was on to Long Wharf that the very first British soldiers landed, beginning the occupation of this rebellious city. Boston was built on a small peninsula called Shawmut by its original Indian inhabitants, the Massachusetts tribe. Shawmut, a word that means living waters in their language because of the many freshwater springs that flowed down the side of three prominent hills on the peninsula. This made an ideal site for settlement, in addition to this beautiful natural harbor that we are here in today. City on the hill in 1630. Rocky New England soil yielded little to them, so they turned to the sea for their livelihood in fishing, commerce, and shipbuilding. And they prospered very well through the following years at these trades, having absolutely no religious objection to. Today are the remains of Griffin's Wharf, where on the fateful night of December 16th of 1773, a group of American patriots, who were very loosely disguised as South Boston. This is built entirely on landfill as part of the harbor one time to the high ground in the distance. 3/4 of Boston's total land area has been built up entirely on landfill over the years. The $1 sewage treatment plant over beyond the airport has certainly done its part as well. Next, coming up on our right on the waterfront is Commonwealth Pier with all the flags on it. This was originally the cruise ship dock for Boston. The Queen Mary and the Queen Elizabeth have both docked in the past. 150 miles east of Boston out to the Georges Bank, one of the richest fishing grounds in the world, seriously overfished by foreign trawler fleets in past decades. But the 200-mile limit and other legislation, including the current closure of large parts of the fishing grounds, have protected the fisheries, but they have yet to fully recover. Boston was built on a small peninsula with three prominent hills on it, nicknamed Tri-Mount in the early days. Note that ships are the largest moving objects that have ever yet been built by man. And that largest object ever built was the CY, carrying 300,000 tons of petroleum products. They built an earthen fortress on that hilltop there overnight. It armed with 2 small cannon and 1,200 men. They're honored generals from the rooftops of Boston. The first 2 assaults were beaten back by the end of that fateful day. He gave his life in a Navy battle early in the war at Guadalcanal as captain of the cruiser San Francisco. This ship was built on the West Coast in 1943, and it saw action in the South Pacific in the war. This ship was twice struck by Japanese kamikaze planes while on picket duty around the fleet, and a fine example of the many ships of this type and others like it that were built in 1812, which encountered the British warship Guerriere without warning. While closing with the Constitution in battle, the British gunners observed their solid camp 14 stood all alone across the Holocaust Island until the building over the 60s got underway. Queen Griffin's guard each corner beneath the clocks. At the very peak is a small pyramid of the then exotic and very expensive metal at the raw bar, which is still there. And he would consume a dozen raw oysters at a time and wash them down with several tables of brandy. And now we're passing by the end of Long Wharf again, and as we pass by the end of the pier, you can peek and see